Hey everybody, it's Safi and Marco Dish Out on Movies, the only movie review show on YouTube to review movies in terms of food. It's just Marco here once again, and I am here today to talk about Night Tide, 1961. And I wanted to watch one of three movies today because there was this one called Mr. Peabody and the Mermaid, and I thought that kind of sounded fun and funny. Like, I don't know, it looked good. And then this one looked like a good horror movie. And then the last one, it's funny because I put up a poll, and then I took it down because I just thought nobody probably knows what these are, so they would just be voting based on the titles, which is still okay. I mean, uh, if you just picked a movie based on a title sometimes, that's fun too. But it's good I took it down because the other one, Queen of the Sea, which is a 1918 film, apparently it is lost. It is presumed lost. It's another one of those silent movies that they just don't bother looking for because they're like, oh, we're in 2023, so we got all these great movies to focus on, like the Marvels and, stuff like that. Stuff like that. So, I ended up choosing Night Tide, and the reason why I decided to review this movie is because I am not watching or reviewing The Token Mermaid, okay? Like, I'm sorry, but I'm just not going to at all. I have no interest in watching that, even to give it a bad review. I have no interest in watching it, like, even if I'm just watching it on YouTube. Because here's the thing, I could go watch the original, and I could go review that. I don't want to watch whatever the fuck this is. I'm just not interested. And, there are some things that I just won't review. There's just some projects, and I have to draw the line somewhere, and there's a lot of Disney projects that I'm just not gonna support or watch or anything, and it's just because it's trash. Like, I know it's trash. I don't need to watch. Like, I saw the rap song from that horribly obnoxious Aquafina. Oh god. Like, if I saw that in theaters, I'd probably get up and walk out and ask for my money back, and then still give it a bad review even though I didn't finish it. So, I thought that Night Tide sounded like a good mermaid movie, and I looked up, there's like 100 something mermaid movies. And I looked and looked and looked, and these three movies just stuck out to me for some reason, and of course, Night Tide in particular, it must have had some significance because there was a lot of weirdness that happened with watching this movie, and it's almost like it was really like a blindsiding thing. Like, I know it's like weird, but I can't wait to talk about, like, it was a really weird experience. And so, yeah, first off, I got all these notes. I'll probably first off just tell you guys about the movie a little bit, and this will all be spoilers, which I don't know if there's that much to spoil because the movie is very, very simple, and there's really only a couple of twists at the very end, and that's when it's like, oh, that was what's happening. That's the story, I guess. And then there's a little monkey wrench thrown in. Anyways, this movie is all about a sailor who is taking a break from being in the Navy, and he's always in his uniform for like 50% of the movie, and he is played by Dennis Hopper. And right off the bat, that is significant to why I probably subconsciously chose this movie. Uh, and you guys could feel free to research that of why you think that is. Uh, I really thought he did an amazing job. I mean, his performance is probably one of my favorite leading man performances that I've seen this year so far. He was really like subtle and just really like he wasn't like loud and obnoxious and he wasn't like these typical leading men. He was very soft spoken, and he was nothing like he was like in Blue Velvet and all these other projects where he's just like totally insane. Like when you think of Dennis Hopper now, you just think insane, over the top, crazy. You don't really think about I am a soft spoken man. I'm a sailor. And I'm Dennis Hopper. That's what he's like the entire movie. And he's so good. He is so perfect that, like, yeah, he is a fucking star. Fuck yeah, he is. He could do anything based off of this movie. Like, even though the movie isn't the greatest movie in the universe, if I saw this movie, I would be like, I want him. I don't care how much it takes. I want that guy. And he's in the Santa Monica area, and a lot of this movie takes place at the Santa Monica Pier, which is also really cool, really great setting for movies. And he goes to this nightclub and meets this woman played by Linda Lawson, who I haven't seen her other projects, but she was really good in this movie as well. She wasn't amazing, but there were a few moments where she was on par with Dennis Hopper, and I really feel like she's a little bit underrated, I guess, because, I've never heard of anyone say anything about a Linda Lawson. Have you guys ever heard of Linda Lawson? I've heard of Linda Carter, and then, like, Floyd Lawson, the fictional character in the Andy Griffith Show, but I've never heard of a Linda Lawson. So, she's good, though. She's very good. Talk about good actresses, people like this, people who can actually act, people who actually are interested in telling a good story like her. They are good actresses. They are so much better than, people like Jennifer Lawrence and Margot Robbie. And he meets her, and then there's this other weird woman, and she's like this older Italian-looking woman. She's a very stereotypical-looking, like, witch character. She's very witchy. She looks like a really creepy person, and she's got these piercing eyes. She looks like she has had a cup or two of baby's blood every year for the past 10 years. Like, that's how creepy she looks. And she says some weird words to the mermaid that you can't even understand. I don't know if it was another language or what it was, but it was just gibberish. And then all of a sudden the mermaid goes off, and he follows her, and it's like she was ordering the mermaid to do something, I don't know. And it turns out another really cool thing is that apparently they have apartments above the carousel at this pier, and she lives in one of the apartments. I thought that was really cool too. And he visits with her, and he gets to know her, and it turns out that she works as a mermaid, a fake mermaid, at this freak show amusement thing at the pier. She lies in a glass tank that looks like it has water in it, and she wears a fake mermaid tail all day. And people just pay 25 cents and come in and look at her, and then they leave. But there's something off, and it's something to do with her boss. She has this weird boss named Sam, Captain Sam, and there's just something weird going on. And then it turns out, on top of that, apparently the last two guys who dated her both were found dead after a full moon. So every time there's a full moon, it is a possibility that this mermaid girl, fake mermaid, kills guys. And it's something to do with her boss, maybe, or the witchy woman, or just her herself. It's really, really odd. And so I gotta say, like, first impressions, I enjoyed this movie. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a fun time. It wasn't very long. You know, it's a very typical throwaway 1950s, 60s type of simple horror movie. Now, here's the thing. I would more so classify it as a mystery thriller, because I didn't really see as many horror elements as I would have expected. You know, a horror movie, you know, you're expecting a lot more horror in the whole movie, and there's not very many horror moments or scenes or elements. There are a couple of really standout moments, though, that, you know, I'll probably remember and think about and throw up over. First off, there's really beautiful, creepy shots in this movie. I really love the black and white. You know, in particular, in the opening kind of like 20 minutes, he's chasing this girl around, trying to find out where she's going. And they had these really creepy shots of like the buildings all lit up at night and him running, and just the locations are really good. And I just think the whole movie looks really good in general. So the way that it's shot is not a problem. Then there's this funny scene where like they're eating breakfast, which is of course fish. And all of a sudden there are these two seagulls that want to eat their breakfast, and then one of the seagulls flies at them, and then she actually catches it and just holds it and plays with it. And I thought that was pretty cool, but also kind of scary, because apparently they had to wire the seagull's beak shut so that it wouldn't bite their faces open. But I thought that was another standout, kind of interesting scene. And then there's this police lieutenant, and he's investigating those two murders. And I gotta say, like, if you look at this guy, he looks exactly like Harvey Keitel mixed with, like, Mel Brooks. So I thought that was funny. And then, so the Captain Sam, a lot of this movie revolves around the main character seeing Captain Sam, talking to him about what happened. And there's this one scene where he goes to his apartment, and there's this weird thing where the witch kind of leads him there, like he's trying to get to the witch, and he chases after her, and all of a sudden she leads him to the captain's apartment somehow. Well, the captain character, there's a really odd thing that I think I don't see how this could be okay, like in terms of legalities and in terms of, it was really strange because the captain had a chopped off hand of a real person from Arabia, and he said that the Sultan gifted him this hand of a thief, and he's just got this chopped off hand in a jar in his apartment, like fucking, you know, Jeffrey you-know-who. And I just thought, like, how illegal is that? Like, how the hell could he have that in his apartment? Like, that was a really strange thing. And see, that's what I meant with, like, the horror in this movie is sparse, because that's one of the few horror moments in the movie, is like him seeing the hand and then getting scared, and then the captain being like, that is from a sultan from Arabia. And the captain, he also has, you know, a lot of these old movie sets, they're really funny to look at because the stuff that they used was so cheap and crappy, and and they reuse a lot of the same stuff too, which we'll talk about pretty soon. Believe me, I mean, you guys are gonna be like, oh yeah, I remember that prop from something else very infamous. The captain, though, he also has this giant tiger skin on his wall, but they have all these close-up shots of the skin behind the captain, and you can tell if you just look at it for like 2 seconds, you can tell that it's nothing but a stuffed tiger animal that's been cut open and just put on the wall to pretend like it's a real tiger skin. I thought that was oh god, that was hilarious. And then, of course, one of the stupider moments of the movie, very cliched moment, and it's even more laughable once you know the ending to the movie. So the captain falls asleep just when the main character needs to ask him an important question. So, like, yeah, I haven't really seen that in movies a lot nowadays. Like, a character wants to ask another character something very integral to the plot, and then they just fall asleep. And in this case, it's even worse because it's like you find out at the end of the movie something, and then it's like, oh, well, now we know why he was purposefully going to sleep. And we'll talk about that pretty soon. And then the main guy, this is another horror moment from the movie. And it's funny, too, because it is, like, ripped straight out of that Goosebumps Deep Trouble book, where the main guy, William Deep, Billy Deep, he'd always have dreams about being strangled by an octopus. Well, the main guy in this movie, he has a dream that he's fighting with this fake octopus. And it comes in at the weirdest moment because he's just starting to have sex with the mermaid girl, the fake mermaid. And then all of a sudden we see him dreaming about fighting with the octopus. And I was like, what is this supposed to symbolize? Like, this is really weird. And to make it even worse, though, they have not confirmed this, I believe, but I will tell you guys, it is 100% the truth. In fact, I want to check to make sure it's the same studio, but I will just tell you guys, he is wrestling the same octopus that Ed Wood used in his movies. You know, that really horribly fake octopus that they made fun of in the Ed Wood Tim Burton movie. He was wrestling with that same octopus. You know, that crappy prop that Ed Wood's just like, oh, look, let's use that. That looks like a fun thing to use. And I want to check, because if it's Warner Brothers, that's the same studio. And that would pretty much 100% confirm. I mean, it looked exactly like it. It looked like the same fucking octopus. And it would be really funny just to keep seeing that octopus show up in random movies. So here we go. Moment of reveal. Moment of truth. Either way, it's funny because, I mean, let's see. Production companies. It doesn't look like it. It says American International Pictures was the distributor. Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm telling you guys that was the same octopus. You just gotta believe me. And then there was a really bizarre sequence, too, where the main guy... Like, I've never seen this before in a horror movie either. So the main guy, he just takes a break from the plot to get a massage. And he's getting this massage, and he's like, I feel really tense. I feel really tense because I'm Dennis Hopper. Oh no, I just feel so tense. And it was really weird because then the captain just appears out of nowhere and he's practically naked and he's doing a sauna, and then they just start having a conversation. Like, that was a weird sequence too. That was weird. The captain gives an exposition monologue at the end of the movie, which is very reminiscent to the worst scene in the original Psycho, which is the scene at the end of Psycho where the psychologist is like, well, Norman Bates killed people because of this, this, and this. And he tried to do this and this and this. And it's just like explaining the whole plot. It was very similar to that, where you're like, okay, this was clearly added in by the studio because they knew that the audience would be like, WTF at the end. Because there is a great sequence at the end. Well, two great sequences. So first off, Dennis Hopper, he has been warned like a million times. Stay away from the girl because she's a naughty girl. She kills her boyfriends when there's a full moon. Very weird stuff with that. And he decides to go deep sea diving with her on a day that there's gonna be a full moon. Yeah. That's just called, we need the movie to happen. You know, we need this movie to continue somehow. And he goes with her, and all of a sudden she swims down to him and she's getting ready to cut his breathing tube and a breathing tank. And it's really, really actually pretty scary and good. And apparently Dennis Hopper actually performed this sequence. He did not want a stunt double, which I thought, that's Dennis Hopper. He can do it all. And then somehow he kind of escapes, or he thinks he escapes, and he gets on the shore and he goes to the amusement park on the night of the full moon when she's working. And he goes in to see her at the exhibit, and it turns out that this whole entire day people have been coming to stare at her dead body. And it is so creepy. It is probably one of the creepiest shots I've ever seen in film history, where she is in this tank, and there's not fake, there's actually real water, and she is submerged in real water, and she's just floating. Actually, she's not submerged, she's floating, and she is dead. And it is really, really creepy. And then the Captain Sam interacts with him, and he comes in, and he's got a gun. And then there's a little altercation, there's a thunderstorm, and the captain gets arrested. And apparently what happened was that the captain adopted this girl, and she's just a normal girl. She's not a mermaid, she's not a sea creature like the movie leads you to believe. And he did not want her to leave him when she became 18. He did not want her to go off with a guy or anything, ever. So he made up all this fake story stuff and this fake mythology about her being a mermaid, and he even killed those two guys that she was dating, and he convinced her that she killed them because she's a mermaid that has to kill every full moon. And finally, the reason why she died is because she loved the main character so much that she decided that if she is a bad guy and she's a killer, that she's just going to kill herself instead. And so when she got away from him in the water, she actually cut her own breathing tube. And I thought, like, wow, that's a really cool story. That is a really awesome, like, simple story. That's really good. And the final monkey wrench in the plot is that the captain never heard of that witchy woman before. So there is still this dangling plot thread of who is this mysterious black dress witch woman who's just wandering around giving orders to this mermaid girl, and etc., etc. Who is she? We don't know. We'll never know. All in all, I would say that this is a decent movie. It's a pretty good, like, one-time watch. Like, if you're bored and you don't have any, like, new horror movies to watch, then you could be like, oh yeah, there's that one movie, Night Tide, I'm gonna look it up and watch it. Boom. It is a little boring, I will admit. You know, there was not as many horror elements as I would have liked. There's not really on-screen violence anywhere. Really, the best part is that part where he discovers that she's been dead the whole day, and there's this creepy shot of her in the water. And there's a thunderstorm, too. I mean, the scenery and atmosphere was very good for this movie as well, I will say. But overall, in terms of food, I would rate this movie a plate of gingerbread cookies with no icing and a glass of skim milk. So to me, the skim milk, you know, nobody wants to drink that. You want to drink 2%. You want to drink just regular milk, even. You don't want to have that watery crap. And so that's already, to me, it's like, this movie could have honestly been a lot better, but at the same time, it's still just okay. It's a simplistic, okay movie. You know, you got the cookies without any icing. And I don't really see anything wrong with that. You know, every once in a while, it's just good to have a simplistic plate of cookies and crappy, watery milk. And then, so this is where the second part of the review begins. So already, had a really weird experience, like, watching this movie and looking at the poster, because the whole time while I was watching the movie, I felt like I had seen it before. And then I felt like I had seen the poster before, too. And it was troubling because I had not seen the poster or the movie. I had never seen this before, ever. You guys know how good of a memory I have. I would have remembered where I had seen this movie anywhere. It doesn't matter. Like, I can remember things all the way back. You know, it's just impossible. So that was a weird experience. But I was just like, maybe it's related to something. I don't know, maybe. But then I went to sleep. And I'm not kidding with you guys when I tell you that, you know, it was the exact same experience as last year when I watched Eye of the Devil. If you guys remember that, I watched that movie. I thought, this is just a good movie. And then I went to sleep, and it was like a horrible, intense, otherworldly experience where it was hard to sleep. It was very, very bad. Weird dreaming. Weird, like, you could tell that movie was not a movie. It was a spell. It was a magic spell. And there was coding in the movie. And there was obviously other stuff that maybe related to past life experience with that movie in particular. Well, this movie was the exact same thing. It was the exact same, like, experience. It was different dreams, but it was the exact same type of feeling. It was very, very creepy. And so it was really weird. And, you know, I had not watched anything else that day that was, like, bad or anything. Like, I watched Leave It to Beaver. I watched that courtroom episode of Love and Death, which would not have affected me because it was not like a depressing, dark thing. But then I watched this thing right before I went to sleep, and this was the thing that did it. And so I'm going to kind of describe, and then I'm going to talk more about the magical elements of this movie, because this movie has a lot of the same elements that Eye of the Devil had. It has a lot of magic stuff in it. It has a lot of cult stuff in it. And yeah. So first off, there's this it was a very dark room. It was like you were on a movie set, and the movie set was after hours, and it was dark, pitch black, but you could still kind of see the movie set. And it was this weird room because, like, you had like this room, and then you had this middle wall, and the middle wall was like double the size of the room. So the middle wall was like stretched up like a lot taller than the rest of the room. Like this wall like separated the room almost. And then there were tables on each sides of this purple wall. It was like a purple wallpaper with yellowish designs. And then there was a table at the end of this divide. There was another table over there. And then there were these restaurant tables on both sides, like these square restaurant tables with their places were all set with forks and knives and plates and glasses. And it was really, really creepy looking. Like, it just looked like a weird room. It didn't look like something like it would be fun to be there. And it was very dark. And for some reason, I was in there with this, like, group of people. And in amongst the group of people, there were, like, 2 people who I went to school with. And then there was, like, a head of the group who was, like, the substitute teacher in my 2nd grade, who I had not seen for years before this dream. And so she was like the head of the group or something. I think she was substituting the group's leader. And then we sat at this table at the end of the pillar. And all of a sudden, like, just things were not going right. And people started, like, being disruptive. And they just started, like, I don't know, it was like chaos. But it was like they were completely, like, out of control. And so then they all sat at the other tables that separated these pillars. And it was really odd because as soon as everyone was sat at this long table, and then it almost kept on like transforming back and forth between being one table and being 2 tables that were separated by this tall purple wall. And so then I thought it was really weird because somebody who was like a closer friend in middle school, I tried to talk to him, and I tried to like lift his head up, and he was in a trance, and he was like sleeping in a trance. And there were all these other people at the table, and they were all in a trance except for the substitute teacher. and then she looked at me for a second, and she might have said something, I can't remember. And I started just like walking around because like I kind of wanted to get out of there because I thought this is really creepy. So it was like a ritual. And what was even weirder was the whole time there was this like ritualistic type of music playing, and it was like boom, pff, boom, pff, boom, pff. And it was this bizarre, like, just constant ritualistic sounding background song, and then all of a sudden people started being disruptive again, and they got up and they were starting to like try to break things. And so there was this one guy, and he was trying to throw this glass vase across the table, or a glass bottle, and all of a sudden I rushed over and the substitute teacher said no, and then the bottle fell off the table and I caught it before it fell on the ground, and I put it back on the table. And they were just causing chaos. They were yelling and screaming and just like laughing and playing and having like a fun time being jackasses. And finally it got really weird because they were taking the glass bottles from like the surrounding square restaurant tables, and they were making Molotov cocktails out of them, and they were throwing them at the purple wall. And the whole time they're doing that, everyone at the table is just sitting there like they're in a trance, and they can't do anything, including like the substitute teacher. She's just sitting there just while it goes, not really caring at all. And the music kept on playing and playing and playing, and finally I woke up. And so that was a really weird dream. I could tell that like it wasn't like a normal dream. It wasn't like a normal nightmare. It wasn't like a normal sleeping experience. It was a very intense, weird and troubling feeling, and it was very bad. And so I would say that this movie has to be related to something, either in terms of it being coded and being like a spell all of in itself, which wouldn't surprise me. It's a 60s movie, and we've talked about a lot of 60s movies. But on the other hand, a lot of other people have seen this movie. They don't have any problems with it. So, it could also be related to a past life thing. Like maybe seeing it triggered when I had seen it before in the past, and then that triggered another real life memory that was just kind of at random, that was like interspliced in between that and then second grade or something. Because maybe it was like the experience of going back in time. Like maybe it was like cutting back and forth in between timelines of like trying to see that scene going on back in time versus another experience that was in this life that was more recent. So that was really weird. And it was like, okay, this is not a movie I'm ever watching again. It was creepy. It was like, eating food and then getting food poisoning for a week. Food that you thought was pretty good at first. There is lots of tarot card talk in this movie, and in particular they talk about how, this whole fortune scene where the main character is given his fortune, it's really bizarre because his future card is the Hanged Man, which is very troubling because if you guys remember, who, when she was killed in real life, she was hanged and positioned like the Hanged Man tarot card So I really think that this relates to real life and another sort of magic spell. Because another coincidence is that this movie takes place in August. It doesn't take place on August 9, but it takes place on August 20th. Because there's a full moon in the movie on the 20th. And then, of course, there's also another occult element where the mermaid supposedly kills on the full moons. That's a very, typical thing of, people in real life getting killed on the specific days of the year during specific events. And, so, yeah, I really think that there's something to this movie. Another very bizarre coincidence that I don't even think is a coincidence. I think it's just straight up weird. Well, I watched this movie yesterday. I watched it because I wanted to get it over with, because I've been getting so sick of getting really excited about watching a movie and then just spending the whole day watching it, reviewing it, and it just being a complete pile of garbage. So I thought, I want to get this movie over with. It's short. I want to watch it at nighttime and then review it the next day. Well, on May 25th, the phase of the moon was a waning crescent phase. Well, on the night that you-know-who was killed, there was also the phase of the moon was a waning crescent phase. So somehow I chose the date exactly the date of time and the time that the moon came out, when to watch it, as it would have been in real life on that specific day in the past. And to give you more of a weird weird fact, there's only a 13% chance that I could have picked that specific day with that specific moon phase to watch this specific movie. So it's pretty clear right there. So and that was really weird. So anyways, that was not what I was expecting with this movie, and yeah, I would probably recommend to stay away from it, because if there is coding inside it, then you don't want to have an Eye of the Devil experience with this movie. Or maybe you wouldn't, but maybe it was just that I would have that specific experience. But I will say, even with that horrible after effect where it was what the fuck is this? It's that was the real experience of the movie. This movie's still better than Time After Time, I gotta say. Time After Time can go jump off a cliff and into the fucking trash can. So please like this video, comment, tell me if you are glad that I chose to watch this mermaid movie that triggered a very bizarre and terrifying dream experience. And there was another dream experience that happened before that specific dream started, but I can barely remember it. It really wasn't very big, and it didn't really feel, it felt like that was the pre, and then this was the entree. That was the appetizer, and I can't even remember it, honestly. I can barely remember just even having a first part of that dream. And then please subscribe if you'd like to see more videos like this, but hopefully they're not going to be videos like this, because this wasn't fun. It wasn't a fun experience to watch this movie and then have it be like an after effect where it's like you get in a car crash and then get whiplash. Like fucking Goober in the Andy Griffith Show. Season 7, I believe. So, goodbye everybody. See you soon.